I was in the kitchen, about to make a pot of congee with century egg and pork for the son who had just reappeared in my life, when the doorbell chimed through the house. With a spatula still in my hand and my apron tied securely around my waist, I walked over to answer it. I opened the door, a look of surprise on my face, wondering which idiot would be visiting unannounced. It was Julian Croft, my husband, and he was looking at me with an expression of pure disgust. At his side, he held the arm of a woman with delicate, pale skin and a face like a porcelain doll. Her stomach was slightly rounded, and the look she gave me was a mixture of smug contempt and pride. I struggled for a moment to find the right words, and finally a single one escaped me. Seriously? Julian's voice was as cold as ice. Eleanor Vance, watch your language. I gestured towards the woman beside him, putting on a show of ignorance. And what's this about? Julian lowered his gaze, his voice calm and detached as he delivered the blow. She's pregnant. It's my child. I can't let her or the baby suffer. I almost laughed out of sheer, blinding anger. The man I had loved so deeply now inspired a hatred just as profound. I hated him for the sweet affections of our youth, for his tenderness and romantic gestures, for the solid promise he had once made. I will never let you down in this lifetime. And I hated him even more for shattering that dreamlike illusion years later, piece by painstaking piece. I still vividly remembered the day Julian came home with lipstick smudges staining his collar and neck. He had stopped trying to hide his affairs, choosing instead to flaunt them right in front of me. I had demanded an explanation, my voice trembling with rage. He just loosened his tie, looking exhausted. Eleanor, can you just stop making trouble? Men have to network for business. He continued, his voice dripping with condescension. Not only are you no help to me, but you come here and give me a headache. Just look at yourself. Do you have any of the grace and dignity of a Vance daughter anymore? Another time, I went to a private club to pick him up and bring him home. Through the dim, shifting lights of the room, I saw him with his arm wrapped around a beautiful young woman. He wore the same gentle, indulgent expression that I had once believed was reserved only for me. I was a fool to think it was exclusive. He had already given it away to someone else. Eleanor, let's just go our separate ways in this, he had told me once, utterly devoid of emotion. You can go out with any man you want. Play around however you like. I won't interfere. But in return, don't think you can interfere with me. Don't worry, you will always be Mrs. Croft. I won't bring any of my flings home, and your position is secure. And now, here he was, casually announcing, she's pregnant. I don't want them to suffer, while grandly parading his mistress before me. A man's word is truly worthless. I thought my heart would still ache after all this time. After all, I had loved him so much. Yet, in that moment, I felt an unexpected and complete calm. The woman beside him spoke in a soft, cloying voice. Sister, Julian never wanted this to happen, but a child can't grow up without a father. I know you're a generous person, sister. You wouldn't mind me and the baby, would you? Julian and I have always been truly in love. As she spoke, tears welled up in her eyes and trailed down her cheeks. A perfect performance of a delicate, wronged flower. It was exactly the kind of act Julian fell for. Disgust flashed in his eyes as he looked down at me, issuing a warning. Eleanor Vance, whether you accept this or not, Chloe is a kind girl. Don't you dare think you can bully her. Are you out of your mind, Dad? A clear, young voice came from behind the sofa. A moment later, a handsome little boy with a sweet face peeked his head out. He looked so much like me. It was in that instant that I remembered what I had been doing. All the melancholy and bitterness vanished, and I rushed back into the kitchen, a new sense of urgency taking over. My porridge was burning. It was too late. The bottom of the pot was completely scorched. Just then, I felt a small tug on my finger. Mom, it's okay. I'm not hungry yet, the little boy said, comforting me with his big, watery eyes. His handsome face, rosy lips, and the soft little hand gently shaking my finger made my heart melt. I squatted down and kissed his cheek. No one is going hungry, especially not my little darling, Mom will make another batch. Mom's century egg and pork congee is the best. That pair of cheating lovers was instantly pushed from my mind. My heart and my entire focus were now filled with my wonderful son. An ominous feeling had already begun to creep into Julian's mind. We had been married for 9 years, and in all that time, he knew perfectly well that I had never been pregnant. His voice trembled when he finally spoke. Eleanor Vance, who is he? Only then did I remember they were still standing in my foyer. I lazily lifted my eyelids and said, Julian, this is my son, who was lost to me for years. You can see for yourself, he's still so young. He can't be without his mother. The innocent, fragile expression on the face of the woman behind Julian instantly froze. Julian's own face darkened, and he exploded in a fit of rage. Eleanor Vance! His eyes were red, and he was surrounded by an aura of thick hostility, seemingly unable to accept the reality of the situation. It was as if he could indulge himself however he pleased outside our marriage, but the idea of me being unfaithful was completely unbearable to him. The little boy pouted and furrowed his brows. Uncle, you're being so scary. Then he broke into a clear, soft smile, opened his arms and wrapped them around my leg. Not like me. I would only ever feel bad for my mom. My heart seemed to skip a beat and then began to pound like a drum. How could he say such a sweet, clever thing? I wanted to scoop him up and smother him with kisses. I had to restrain my eager hands. There were still 2 awful people here that needed to be dealt with. I gently covered my child's ears and looked at Julian with a mocking smile. What are you so angry about? Isn't this what you said we should do? We don't interfere with each other, remember? The veins on Julian's temples throbbed and his teeth ground together with an audible crack, as if he were trying with all his might to suppress his emotions. He glared at me, his voice a low burn of rage. You can play around all you want, but who the hell gave you permission to have another man's child? What? I replied with a cold laugh. Julian, you get another woman pregnant and bring her to our home, telling me I can't let them suffer. But I can't have another man's child? Do you really think you have any right to say that? Don't be such a hypocrite. Julian was panting heavily. Then, as if he'd suddenly figured something out, he sneered. Eleanor Vance, you can't possibly be jealous, can you? Using some kid from your extended family to try and trick me? This tactic of trying to win me back by pushing me away is useless now. I couldn't understand how the fresh-faced, handsome young man I had fallen in love with had transformed into this cold, greasy, common man. Was I deceived all those years ago, or was I just completely blind? He tried to command me from a place of superiority. Eleanor, get this little bastard out of here immediately, and I won't pursue this matter. In response to his words, and in front of his incredulous eyes, I swung my hand. I hadn't wanted to be violent, but when I heard him call my son a little bastard, I couldn't hold back anymore. Mr. Croft! The woman exclaimed, glaring at me with fury. Eleanor Vance, how could you do that to Mr. Croft? In front of Julian, I slapped Chloe squarely across her other cheek. She was stunned. You actually hit me! She shrieked and rushed towards me, ready to retaliate. I calmly lifted my foot. What? Don't you care about the baby in your belly? Chloe instinctively clutched her abdomen and looked pleadingly at Julian. Eleanor, sister. You can both leave now, I interrupted her dramatic performance, looking coldly at Julian. You cheated. I had an affair. You're about to have your child. I already have mine. I'd say we're even. I pulled out the paternity test report from my pocket and threw it in his face to stop him from deluding himself into thinking this was all some game. I sneered. He is my son, and I am his biological mother. The words on the report, Eleanor Vance is the biological mother of Leo Mitchell, stabbed at Julian's eyes. Have you seen enough? Get out of here now. Don't waste the time I need to cook porridge for my son. Julian was silent. He stared into my eyes for a long moment, searching for any sign of my past tolerance and affection for him, or even anger and despair. Anything to prove that I still cared. But this time, he failed. I had once shattered vases and plates in a fit of rage, screaming at him hysterically. I had also cast aside the dignified posture of the eldest daughter of the Vance family, pleading with him through tears. I had even cursed at him like a shrew, pointing at his nose and using the most vicious language I could think of. But when love fades, and only resentment is left, it eventually gives way to a profound sorrow. I never understood how two people who once loved each other so deeply could end up like this. I used to be confused, but now I was too tired to even think about it. My love for him had been a blazing fire, and he had extinguished it, little by little. The remaining embers had still held out hope for him to change his mind, but he had scoffed at them. In the end, I had put out the last of the fire myself. Even if the pain made me wish I was dead, even if it felt like I was bleeding out, all that remained was the calm of a heart that had turned to ash. Julian stared at me intensely, his voice hoarse. Eleanor Vance, are you serious? Suddenly, his anger flared again. Disregarding Chloe and my son's presence, he violently grabbed my wrist, his grip so tight it felt like he wanted to crush the bones. His expression was dark and turbulent, like a raging sea. Who allowed you to be serious? Chloe looked at Julian with a mixture of fear and uncertainty. His behavior didn't at all match his claim of having no feelings left for me. In fact, it was clear he still cared deeply. At that moment, I was furious too. Without hesitation, I slapped his other cheek with my free right hand. Are you insane? I forcefully pulled my left hand away, rubbing the red mark he'd left on my skin with a mix of anger and disdain. Who allowed me? I allowed myself. What do you matter? You're nothing but a pile of rotting garbage, still trying to play the disgusting role of a possessive lover from some cheap novel. You are absolutely repulsive. I was so angry I couldn't stop myself from cursing loudly. Julian glared at me for a moment longer, then turned and left, pulling Chloe with him. I watched their backs retreat with indifference. Mom? The child cautiously tugged at my sleeve. It's okay, I said, patting his head. I didn't scare you, did I? The little boy shook his head and said adorably, I wasn't scared. Mom is so cool. I chuckled and went back to cooking the porridge. After it was ready, I watched the little one gobbling it down and kindly reminded him, eat slowly, don't rush. He looked up at me, his face full of satisfaction. Mom's cooking is really delicious. I was momentarily lost in thought. It was ironic that I, the eldest daughter of the Vance family who had never had to do a single chore, had learned to cook for Julian Croft. Back then, I was completely consumed by love. I truly believed that love could conquer anything. Little did I know, that was just my own wishful thinking. Pushing aside my jumbled thoughts, I finally asked the little boy the question that had been on my mind. Leo, who is your biological father? Don't be fooled by how tough I appeared in front of those two. I was completely confused myself. I had been married to Julian for 9 years, and I was certain that in those 9 years I had never been pregnant. Yet this little boy had arrived with a paternity test that was 99.99% certain, and he resembled me so much that I couldn't possibly deny he was my son. The only abnormal thing I could recall was that a little over 5 years ago, I had fainted and remained unconscious for 3 days for reasons nobody could explain. By that time, my relationship with Julian had already soured. He was indifferent to my condition, probably assuming it was just another one of my tactics to keep his attention. I suspected something must have happened to me during those 3 days, but to become pregnant and give birth in just 3 days? I admit my mind struggled to accept it. Leo's smile faltered slightly. He pressed his lips together, and the soft, innocent expression he wore in front of others vanished. His eyes were clear and mature as he said, Mom, what if I told you that I don't want you to meet my father? I laughed and pinched his chubby cheek. Why not, Leo? Other kids would be eager for their parents to get together and have a perfect family. And even if they couldn't be together, they would try to play matchmaker. Why are you so different? Leo replied softly. If my father were worthy of your trust for a lifetime, I wouldn't oppose it. Whether he can win my mother's heart is up to his own abilities, and I won't interfere. I just hope my mom doesn't give up the life she wants because of me. I only want to be my mother's armor, not her weakness. Mom, you are yourself first, and then a wife and a mother. Leo's expression was incredibly serious. I was flabbergasted. Son, isn't your understanding of the world a little too advanced? Is this really something a 5-year-old would say? I keenly sensed that my son seemed to have a dislike for his father, even a subtle aversion. He called me mom with such familiarity, while he referred to that man as the distant and formal father. A hint of mist appeared in Leo's eyes, a mix of relief and sadness. Besides, my father was never a good man to my mother. Before I could fully grasp the meaning of his words, my wrist suddenly felt cool. The little boy was carefully applying ointment to the red mark that Julian had left. While he applied it, he blew gently on my skin. Pain, pain, fly away. How did I get such a lovely and caring son? That night, Leo settled into my home. He hugged a pillow and asked timidly, Mom, can I sleep with you? I do not agree, Julian said sharply from the doorway. He was glaring fiercely at Leo, his eyes bloodshot like a wild animal whose territory had been invaded. I scoffed. I don't care whether you agree or not. I had once scolded him just as angrily, forbidding him from spending the night with other women. But it had been useless. He did whatever he wanted. Now, I was just sleeping with my own son. Even if I brought home another man, what could he possibly do? The words he had thrown at me years ago were now coming back to hit him right between the eyes. Leo seemed to be frightened. A bright red flush spread to the corners of his eyes, and tears as big as beans began to well up. Uncle, I haven't seen my mom for a long time. I just want to stay with her. Is that not allowed? His voice was choked with a soft, tearful tone. His delicate, pale face, which was an 80% match to mine, looked utterly pitiful. It was my fault, Mom. I'll go. My own features are more striking and flamboyant. Even when I'm feeling down, I carry an air of defiant pride. To see such a heart-wrenching expression on a face that so closely resembled my own was deeply affecting. I immediately scooped him up into my arms and coaxed him softly. Go wherever you want. No one can bully my son. With that, I shot Julian a disdainful glance. You're the one who said we would each do our own thing. Don't you think you're overstepping now? I sleep with my son, and you can sleep with that woman of yours. Isn't that fair? Look at your fierce, intimidating expression. Do you have any resemblance to the polished air of the Croft family? Can you stop being so unreasonable? My voice was filled with deep disdain. I never expected that one day his own rules would come back to haunt him. It was he who said we would live separate lives. It was he who said we wouldn't interfere with each other. And it was he who now couldn't stand the idea of me having another man's son. A person with such blatant double standards truly amazed me. No matter how much I used to look at him, I could never get enough. Now, just the sight of him annoyed me. I held my son and walked into the bedroom without looking back. Because of that, I didn't see the tearful expression on Leo's face vanish in an instant, replaced by a provocative glance aimed squarely at Julian. His lips moved slightly, forming 2 silent words. You fool. Julian was so angry his face turned a shade of green. The next day at noon, the housekeeper had prepared lunch. Julian was carefully helping Chloe into her seat and serving her food, his eyes lowered in a display of tenderness, as if yesterday's rage had never happened. If I had cared to look up at that moment, I'm sure I would have heard the echo of a time when he used to treat me the same way. However, I didn't have time to watch the two of them flirt because I was currently in a debate with my son, Leo. Mom, I want to eat KFC. I said seriously, Leo, eating too much fried food will make you chubby. Fried chicken, soda, burgers, they're all unhealthy. Leo whined and tried to tempt me. Mom, we won't eat much. Just think about the crispy and tender spicy chicken sandwich we had when we came back from the amusement park with an icy lemon soda and crunchy chicken legs. My resolve crumbled. I slapped my thigh. All right, I'll take you this weekend. Don't blame me for being weak. I was a little tempted by the idea myself. Leo kissed my cheek and smiled, his eyes lighting up. Mom is the best mom in the world. Julian saw that I hadn't spared him a single glance, and he felt a surge of anger. His previously gentle movements became rough and perfunctory. Julian, I don't like celery, Chloe said to him in a low voice. Julian completely ignored her. His gaze was fixed on me and Leo. His eyes were dark like a deep abyss, and the veins on his hands bulged as if he were trying to snap his chopsticks in half. I noticed this scene and sneered inwardly. Men are so predictable. When I offered him my passionate love, he cast it aside like a worn-out shoe. Now that I treated him with contempt, he couldn't stop trying to test my feelings for him, trailing after me like a lost puppy. When a woman truly gives up, does he really think she'll ever turn back? And I hadn't talked to Leo again about who his biological father was, and I wasn't going to press the issue. The Vance family was wealthy and influential. We could easily raise not just one child, but 10. My parents had only one daughter, and they spoiled me rotten. When I had originally decided to marry Julian, they hadn't opposed it. At that time, Julian hadn't changed, and he treated me exceptionally well. He was clearly terrible at needlework, yet he insisted on knitting a scarf for me himself. The stitching was rough, and the pattern was clumsy. I deliberately told him it was ugly, and his expression fell, yet he said firmly, "I'll work hard to learn. I'll knit the most beautiful and warmest scarf for my Eleanor." I had hugged his neck and laughed, telling him I was just joking and that I really loved it. His eyes had sparkled like stars as he leaned down to kiss my eyelids. My circulation is poor, and my hands and feet get cold easily in the winter. He would take my icy hands and place them inside his warm coat, smiling indulgently. I am willing to warm my Eleanor for a lifetime. When I was once harassed by some thugs, he had descended like a god, beating them until they were terrified. He had draped his black coat over my shoulders, and the faint mint scent of it made my tears flow. "Julian, I'm scared," I had whimpered. He had clumsily wiped my face until it was red. "Don't cry, I chased them away. Eleanor, I will protect you for a lifetime." Even my father, a cunning and shrewd man in the business world who understood human nature better than anyone, never once doubted Julian's sincerity towards his only daughter. As for me, I was deeply ensnared in his gentle pampering. The moment I found out he was cheating, my world fell silent. Everything withered and felt absurd. I was standing in a department store still holding a black shirt I had picked out for him. On my phone, the photos of him holding hands and kissing another woman were painfully glaring. A melancholic song was playing over the store's speakers. Actually, I understand, but I don't really understand. The ending will be a separation. I don't want to separate. I'm still foolishly waiting with my phone. Tears fell onto the screen, blurring my vision. The clothes you left are still on the balcony. And maybe I've never seen the sea you mentioned. Maybe the love you spoke of was false and never existed. I wiped the tears away with all my strength. No, he loves me so much. How could he betray me? I must have seen it wrong. The music box you gave me is in the drawer. Was all the happiness taken away by you? I opened the picture again, full of hope. The image of the two of them kissing reappeared, seeming to mock my naivety. My dad was furious on the day he found out Julian had betrayed me. He personally went to Julian's office and broke 2 of his ribs, then ordered me to divorce him immediately. I cried for a whole day and night, unwilling to let go. Many people called me a fool, hopelessly love-struck, crying over a scumbag who had kicked me to the curb. But if the needle isn't pricking their own skin, how would they know the pain? I had loved him for over a decade, from high school to university, and then as we stepped into marriage. How many decades does a person get in life? I had poured my deepest feelings and the best years of my youth into nurturing this great tree called love. It had taken deep root in my heart. Severing those emotions was no different from digging out my own heart. And how could I possibly accept a divorce? Should I just step aside for another woman and let her reap the benefits? Not a chance. If Leo hadn't shown up, even if Julian brought a pregnant Chloe to flaunt in front of me, I still wouldn't have considered divorce at that point. It had nothing to do with love anymore. As long as I was still Mrs. Croft, they would forever be the mistress and the illegitimate child who could never be seen in the light of day. I brought Leo back to the Vance family home. My mom and dad were both stunned. "Hello, Grandpa and Grandma," Leo called out sweetly. Dad looked dazed for a moment, then quickly recovered. Daughter, is this your son? My grandson? I nodded. His name is Leo Mitchell. Mom frowned slightly. His last name is Mitchell, not Croft. Wait, when did you have a child? When did my daughter get pregnant and give birth? How come we didn't know? I awkwardly scratched my head. Honestly, I don't know either. Dad's expression turned serious. So, he's not that damn bastard's child? A drop of cold sweat appeared on my forehead. No. I was worried about that, so a few days ago I took some of Julian's hair and did a paternity test with Leo. The report showed that my son has zero biological relationship with Julian, but I am indeed Leo's mother. Dad excitedly patted me on the shoulder. You finally gave that little bastard what he deserved. Well done. My son was warmly welcomed by both his grandparents. Dad waved his hand decisively and had the butler order a full wardrobe of limited edition children's clothing for all 4 seasons, as well as every child-related household item imaginable. Mom immediately instructed the nanny to convert a guest bedroom into a children's room. I explained Leo's origins to them. I had gone to a bar, gathered my courage, and was about to hire my first ever male companion for the night, but was suddenly hugged around the legs by a little boy calling me Mom. I still couldn't forget the shocked expressions on the faces of the men in the bar. Other patrons had also given me strange looks. Leo looked so much like me, it was as if he were carved from the same mold. As I spoke, I showed them the paternity test. I smiled awkwardly. It's quite magical, isn't it? Suddenly becoming a mom without any of the pain. I got a cute little rice ball for free. My parents fell silent. Finally, my dad said, So you also don't know who the father of the child is? I pursed my lips. Yeah, you both know whether I've been pregnant or not. I don't even know where my son came from, let alone his dad. Dad waved his hand casually. Then let's just raise the son and forget the father. If he really comes knocking on our door, we'll just give him some money to send him away. I stayed at my parents' house for a few days with my son. I really didn't want to go back. Every time I saw Julian's gloomy expression, as if I had been the one to betray him first, and his erratic emotions, I felt like throwing up. I couldn't help but ask again about Leo's background. Previously, Leo had avoided the topic, but this time, he surprisingly didn't change the subject. He asked me seriously, Mom, do you believe in parallel worlds? I replied, I didn't before, but now I do. I couldn't help but ruffle his hair. Otherwise, how did this little guy appear? Leo dodged my hand and fixed his messy hair. Mom, if I said that the you in this world crossed over to the you in another parallel world, would you believe it? It would be like your soul was transferred. The you in this world would have been unconscious for a while without any awareness. I thought about it. I did faint for 3 days back then. Julian hadn't paid any attention to me, but my parents had been terrified. Leo went straight to the point. Mom, you must have crossed into a parallel world at that time. You don't remember me because you must have lost your memory when you came back. According to my father's description, you should have crossed over with the memories of this world, because my father once investigated and found that your personality was quite different when you married him. I was shocked. I married your dad? Leo nodded gently. Yes. In my world, you and Uncle Croft were just strangers. That was easy enough to understand. I had met Julian after transferring schools in high school. But what if the parallel world version of me had never transferred schools? Then, naturally, I wouldn't have met him. A small difference can lead to a huge divergence. The branches of the same tree grow in different directions, and different choices made by the same person can lead to vastly different outcomes. Logically, having experienced such a passionate love and then a heart-wrenching betrayal, how could I possibly fall in love with another person and have a child with him in such a short period of time? What's going on? I asked Leo. Honey, what kind of person is your father? Leo paused and said, Arrogant, dictatorial, cold, and ungrateful. That sounded nothing like Julian. Completely different types. I tentatively asked, did I fall in love with him? I had never seen such an expression on Leo's face before. In an instant, his delicate and beautiful features lost all their softness. A storm seemed to be gathering in his eyes, and his voice was dark and cold. Does he deserve it? Very good. To be able to provoke such a reaction from my usually good-tempered child, I must have encountered another scumbag. Leo took a deep breath. Mom, there isn't a good man out there, I said with a smile. Leo, you can't say that. You're a man too. Such a good and gentle little boy. How are you not a good one? Leo's face tightened as he retorted, I am not a man. I am a boy. And also, I am not an object. I laughed heartily. How is my son so adorable? What is your father's name? I thought for a moment. After all, it's a parallel world. If I were to marry someone of the same social class, there would only be a handful of successful men in the entire capital with the surname Mitchell who weren't much older than me. Adrian Mitchell, Leo said softly. Adrian Mitchell. In this world, Adrian Mitchell and I are like parallel lines with no intersection. Regarding the matters between you and my dad, it's better for you to recall them yourself. If I were to recount them, it would carry my intense personal emotions, which could easily lead to a biased perception of my father. After all, I really dislike him. Mom, Leo said seriously, no matter what choice you make after you regain your memories, I will support you. I twitched my lips. Little one, are you really only 5 years old? No way. How could a 5-year-old child have such mature and rational thoughts? But usually, his adorable childishness did indeed have the innocence of a 5-year-old. I felt completely bewildered. Isn't this child's personality a bit too fragmented? Leo smiled. Mom thinks I'm as old as I am. If you don't want to see me as your son, we can still be friends. You little brat? Mom, Leo said softly, you need to be prepared. I can feel it. My father will soon come to this world. Speak of the devil. I looked speechlessly at the invitation in my hand, flipping it over and over. The Mitchell family, known for their low profile, was suddenly inviting all the aristocrats and socialites to attend a banquet they were hosting. I still carried the label of Mrs. Croft. They could have just sent the invitation directly to Julian. What did it mean to send me a separate one? If you told me there was no hidden intention behind it, I really wouldn't believe it. Leo stared at the invitation grimly, looking very displeased. Shameless. He seemed to think of something, and his face darkened further. Mom, if you're going to the banquet, do you have to go with Uncle Croft? I helplessly shrugged. Yeah, we haven't divorced yet. I need to get divorced as soon as possible. Before, it didn't matter. Not divorcing was just a way to annoy Julian and his mistress. But it's different now. I have Leo. Even if he is a legitimate child in another world, in this world, he can only be considered my illegitimate child. Once I get divorced, I can bring him back to the Vance family. With the power of the Vance family behind us, even if he's an illegitimate child, I doubt anyone would dare to say a word. Moreover, hearing Julian call him a little bastard really infuriated me. Leave. I had to leave without any delay. I attended the banquet with Julian. I glanced at Chloe, who was still living in the Croft family home, and saw the resentful and jealous expression she shot my way. I sneered. Julian, that man is really something else, keeping a mistress while pretending to still care about me. Upon entering the hall, I straightened my posture. No matter how much we couldn't stand each other in private, we had to put on a show in public. Because I had no memory of that other world, I was still quite curious about my son's biological father. Finally, I saw him, the man who was the center of everyone's attention. He had a tall and upright figure, dressed in a dark gray suit. He was turned sideways to me so I could only see his smooth profile, a high-bridged nose, and slightly thin lips. One could only imagine how captivating his face must be. The atmosphere around him was just as Leo had described, arrogant, dictatorial, and cold. I could only say that this type of man was not my type at all. I liked warm men, like the Julian of the past, youthful and sunny, with the spiritedness and boldness of youth, and a passionate, unrepentant approach to love. Adrian Mitchell, however, was the kind of man who seemed deep and reserved, which was not my preferred type. I held my wine glass and thought idly. At that moment, the man seemed to sense something and turned around, just as I happened to look up. In an instant, our eyes met. My head exploded with a loud bang. Countless chaotic memories flooded into my mind. My vision went dark and I almost lost my balance. Julian sensed that something was wrong and quickly supported me. Finally, I had received all the memories. I looked into Julian's eyes and clearly saw the fleeting concern in their depths. I sneered coldly in my heart. Disregarding the many eyes on me, I forcefully shook off his hand. Great. Really great. Did I destroy a galaxy in my past life? How could I possibly encounter two pieces of trash like this in one lifetime? I had already let go of my love for Julian. It was completely gone. However, being confronted with these two men, each one worse than the other, made me feel so nauseous I could have thrown up last night's dinner. One betrays me. The other uses me. I was so angry my whole body was shaking. Yet Adrian Mitchell, still unaware, walked towards me. He looked at me deeply, his eyes filled with guilt and pain, as well as a careful, guarded love. I knew that was him from the parallel world. Love. Such rubbish. Was it even worthy of being called love? I inhaled and exhaled, trying to stay calm, but I couldn't. I really couldn't. Seeing this face that I loathed, I just wanted to throw him off the 30th floor. I couldn't take it anymore. I slapped him hard across the face. Adrian's head was knocked to one side. Amidst the crowd's exclamations, my voice was as cold as a 1,000-year-old glacier. It's been a long time, Adrian Mitchell. Julian frowned and said, Eleanor, do you know him? Another slap. Julian also received a solid one from me and was kicked away for good measure. Get lost. You have no right to speak. Perhaps I was just born without the fate of a typical female lead. In other stories, the female lead is mistreated by a scumbag male lead, and then a gentle second male lead comes along, pampers her to the extreme, heals her wounds, and they have a happy ending. As for me, I deeply suspect that heaven has a personal grudge against me. As the saying goes, God closed a door for me and then conveniently welded the window shut. In that parallel world, I had already come to terms with Julian's change of heart. In a state of despair, I had entered that other reality only to find that the Vance family was on the brink of bankruptcy. I had no idea why. The Vances were doing well in my world. Later, I learned that in the parallel world, my dad had bid on a project, but then national policy changed, and the huge investment couldn't be recovered. In my world, my dad had somehow missed out on that project. I once heard him say to my mom with lingering fear, "Fortunately, we didn't get that project. Otherwise, our family would be finished." I inherited the memories of my parallel self. My dad was still the same dad, treating me like a precious gem. At that time, the Mitchell family had proposed a marriage alliance. As long as I married Adrian Mitchell, the eldest son of the family, it would resolve the urgent crisis the Vances were facing. My dad didn't want to sacrifice my happiness and said he would find another way, but the family couldn't wait any longer. After going through a failed marriage with Julian, I had calmly agreed. I no longer had any expectations for love. Adrian needed a wife, and I needed to revive my family's business. It was just mutual exploitation. After marrying him, I fulfilled my duties as a wife. But the disgusting part was that Adrian, that bastard, had someone he cherished in his heart. And that wasn't even the worst of it. At a banquet, he used me to block a glass of wine for his sweetheart, and I accidentally drank a cup that had been drugged. The result was predictable. He stood by and appreciated my pathetic state for quite a while before condescendingly helping me. That was when Leo was conceived. Afterwards, I almost killed Adrian with my bare hands. When I remembered asking Leo if I had fallen in love with his father, I just wanted to slap myself. Love him? I wanted him dead. If my feelings at that moment were disgust, then what followed made me thoroughly hate him. Leo, although he was an accident, was a child I had carried for 10 months and given birth to. How could I not love him? Moreover, he looked so much like me and was so sensible and well-behaved. I naturally loved him dearly. He was like a beam of light illuminating my otherwise dark life. But the good times didn't last. Leo was kidnapped by robbers, and to get his sweetheart back, Adrian actually disregarded Leo's safety. Did he ever stop to think that Leo was also his biological son? I finally understood why Leo was so distant from his father. His dislike was faint only because Adrian was merely a stranger to him who happened to share his blood. Hate? He had stopped caring about that man a long time ago, so what was there to hate? No way. If I stayed here any longer, I would be so angry I'd explode. In this life, the next life, and the life after that, I must keep my distance from men. My teeth nearly crunched together, I turned around and left without looking back. Once I was out of the banquet hall, the cool wind slapped against my face. I wiped my cheeks and found that I was already crying. I wasn't crying for lost love, nor for the despair of being used. I was crying for my own terrible luck. What kind of awful people did I keep encountering? Mom? A tender, clear voice sounded. It was Leo. He was wearing a little white suit with a beautiful rosebud pinned to his chest. Because he wasn't tall enough, he awkwardly stood on his tiptoes, stretched out his hand, and handed me a tissue. Mom, don't cry. You still have me. I will always love you. I spent several days drafting the divorce agreement. Damn it. One of them was enough to make my blood pressure rise. Two of them together could send me straight to heaven. I really didn't want to step foot in the Croft house again, so I arranged to meet Julian at a cafe. I expressionlessly pushed the agreement across the table. Julian, let's get a divorce. Julian looked like he hadn't slept for several nights. He had a scruffy beard and his eyes were bloodshot. He didn't even look at the papers, asking hoarsely, "Is it because of Adrian Mitchell? Do you love him that much? Are you so eager to divorce me so you can be with him?" Me? Love Adrian Mitchell? What kind of horror story was this? I said sarcastically. Let's not even talk about Adrian. You, Julian Croft? What kind of silly, deep-in-love act are you trying to play now? You were the one who said you would treat me well for life, and you were the first to cheat. You said we could both play our own games, and when I had a child, it was you who questioned me. You have some nerve. Julian froze, the anger in his eyes slowly dissipating. His voice trembled. Eleanor, I had Chloe get rid of the child. It was my fault. I'll treat Leo like my own son. Can we please be together again? The entire cup of tea on the table splashed onto his face. I put down the teacup and calmly said, "Can you say that again?" His disgusting face slowly overlapped with the memory of Adrian chasing after his own true love, abandoning his son. They were both so damn deserving. Julian fell silent. You have to sign this agreement whether you want to or not. After all, it would be pretty embarrassing to go to court, don't you think, Julian? Water droplets slid down his face. His eyelashes trembled slightly, creating a sense of broken, defeated beauty. The veins on the back of his hand bulged as his fingers tightened, crumpling a corner of the agreement. I'll give you 3 days, I said coldly. If you don't sign, then we'll see each other in court. Humans are truly strange creatures. They know perfectly well that you don't want anything to do with them, yet they still come over to provoke you. Father, my mom doesn't want to see you, Leo said with a smirk, blocking Adrian Mitchell's path. I put down the TV remote, stood up, and walked over to them. Mom? Leo looked up at me. Leo, you go back to your room first, I said, patting his head. Leo hesitated, but ultimately turned with a simple, okay. His small figure disappeared behind the door. The gentle smile on my face vanished completely. Adrian looked tired, his hair disheveled, yet it didn't diminish his handsome appearance in the slightest. His deep eyes no longer held the indifference of the parallel world, but instead surged with countless emotions, as if he genuinely cared about me. I said impatiently, say what you have to say, or get out. Adrian was different from Julian. I had truly loved Julian, so the pain after his betrayal was intense and prolonged. With Adrian, at first, I was grateful to him because he was willing to save the Vance family from disaster. Even when I discovered after our marriage that he had a cherished person in his heart, I didn't care much. At most, I felt a bit uncomfortable. mainly feeling contempt for his actions. I would fulfill my marital duties, but that definitely did not include being schemed against and then forced to sleep with him. And then came the incident with Leo's kidnapping. The hatred I felt in that moment was almost equal to the hatred I felt when I learned Julian had betrayed me. Adrian remained silent. I felt bored and was about to turn away. He suddenly grabbed my wrist. "Should I call you Mrs. Croft?" He laughed self-deprecatingly. I said lightly, "It won't be for long. Speaking of which, meeting both of you in this lifetime has just been my bad luck." He closed his eyes, his voice tight. "I'm sorry." My smile was full of sarcasm. If sorry was worth anything, why would we need the police? I stepped forward, my voice enticing. "Do you really want to ask for my forgiveness?" His eyes brightened and he nodded eagerly. I said softly but with a cruel tone, "You jump from the Thousand Churns cliff, and if you survive, I will forgive you." The Thousand Churns cliff was the precipice where the kidnappers had nearly tossed Leo into the roaring sea below. The phrases parting amicably and blessing each other were nonsense to me. My nature is to be calculative and vengeful. Let them all die is what I truly feel. Suffering in silence and hurting myself to gain others' pity? Not a chance. As soon as I finished speaking, I saw sorrow and shock in his eyes. I remained unmoved and said coldly, "And also, let go of me immediately. Don't force me to slap you. The suffering my son has endured. How can you, as his biological father, not experience it for yourself?" Julian finally agreed to sign the divorce agreement. Over the past 3 days, he had tried to continue his act of deep affection in the hope that I would change my mind, but I gave him no opportunities. I took Leo out to eat, drink, and have fun. By the time he arrived at one destination, we were already on our way to the next. His fingertips were pale as he held the pen, his face haggard. He took a deep breath. "Eleanor Vance, I'll ask you one last question." I was about to regain my freedom, so I generously said, "Ask." His eyes were filled with complex thoughts, and he spoke each word deliberately. "Have you ever loved Adrian Mitchell?" I raised an eyebrow. I really didn't expect him to be so obsessed with this question. I chuckled softly. Is he even worthy? However, I am actually quite grateful to him. After all, little Leo's appearance made me feel that the world isn't so bad. Julian closed his eyes. The tip of the pen moved slightly. From then on, Eleanor Vance and Julian Croft lived separate lives with no interference. After that, I never saw Adrian Mitchell again. However, I received a letter from him, along with a property gift agreement. I took one glance at the letter, which was nothing but some pointless confessions, and carelessly burned it. As for Julian, after our divorce, the Croft family was continuously pressured and besieged by the Vance family. "Dad," I said with a smile. "Mom, Grandpa is getting revenge for you," Leo added. Dad arrogantly turned his face away. "I told you to divorce him earlier so I could deal with that grandson." He had taken my feelings into account, fearing that I still had lingering emotions for Julian and had hesitated to take action. He understood his daughter incredibly well. A bond of over 10 years couldn't just be let go. He could only wait for me to come to terms with it, get divorced, and then slowly move on. The Vance family had been a prestigious household in the capital for 100 years. While the Croft family had a place in the capital, it couldn't compare. Soon, their business began to falter. The last I heard was that the Croft family went bankrupt, and Julian and Chloe moved into a cramped and filthy rental apartment. They quarreled over trivial matters every day. In a fit of anger, Julian even pushed Chloe, causing her to have a miscarriage. Later, Julian was investigated for tax evasion and corruption within his company and was taken away by the police. But what did any of that have to do with me? The brilliant sunlight shone on the beach, covering it in a layer of gold. I wore sunglasses and enjoyed the sun, a cup of iced lemonade on the table beside me. I took a deep sip. It felt so good. Leo, with bare feet, stepped on the fine, soft sand. Holding a small shovel, he piled up sand scoop by scoop. Soon, 2 small mounds appeared on the beach. They were pointed at the top, closely resembling grave mounds. 2 black lines appeared on my forehead. Damn it, son. You wouldn't be building those for us, would you? That's not allowed. I turned my head and pretended not to see, but my son hurried over and asked, Mom, who do you think I'm building these for? I twitched my lips and made up my mind. That one is Julian Croft, and the other one is Adrian Mitchell. Anyway, it definitely can't be me. Leo clapped his hands. Congratulations, Mom. You guessed right. I poked his nose and chuckled. You really are a clever little thing. The vast sea stretched endlessly, shimmering with tiny waves under the sunlight. The waves seemed to carry people's troubles away, flying off with the crystalline splashes. When the darkness fades, the stars finally shine brightly. Extra. Father, you shouldn't be here. Leo looked up, his eyes devoid of warmth, and said coldly, Mom has already forgotten you. That's a good thing in her not-so-lucky life. What? Do you think you haven't caused her enough damage? Adrian's attitude was equally indifferent as he retorted, In this world she hasn't married me? Leo scoffed. You have some nerve still expecting to occupy the mom from another parallel world. But my mother is really unlucky. Not only did she marry a scumbag, but she also encountered someone like you, a total waste. I don't really blame you for giving up on me to pursue your true love. What I find most unbearable is that you made my mother sad. His father ignored his sarcasm and said, Leo, you should know, right? This world does not have an Eleanor Vance who gave birth to you. You will eventually return to your original world. Leo's expression changed slightly. Yes, after his mom returned to her world, the mom in his world was just a soulless body. He didn't know why the mom from his world hadn't come back. Falling into this parallel world had been a complete accident. However, he had recognized at a glance that this was the mom who had given birth to him, cared for him, and loved him. Just thinking about going back to a world without his mom made him feel an unstoppable panic. He didn't want to leave. He was unwilling to be just a passerby in his mom's life. But he also knew that as a 5-year-old child, he really couldn't change anything. Just as he had mysteriously come to his mom's world, he would also return to his own world in some mysterious way. Since that was the case, rather than wallowing in self-pity, he would rather cherish every day spent with his mom. He crossed his arms and said, So what? My mom will only love me in this lifetime. You and Julian Croft are just 2 stumbling blocks in her life. Once she steps over you, don't expect to leave any trace in her heart. His father finally got angry, but he didn't dare to touch him. When Leo found out that his mom had told his father to go jump off the Thousand Churns cliff, his brow had twitched because he felt that his father really would do such a thing. His mom and dad were just caught in a cheap drama of, I don't like you. I like the pure and beautiful moonlight. I humiliate you because you occupy the space of that moonlight. And it is only when I finally lose you that I realize I have deeply fallen in love with you. After that, Leo never saw his father again. But would his father really die so easily? He remained skeptical. One day, he received a letter. My son, Leo. When you receive this letter, the portal to the parallel world will be closed, and you will remain in this world forever, accompanied by your mother. I hope you and your mother will take care of yourselves.